Hello and welcome to another episode of Full Court Finance here at Zacks. I'm your host, Ben Rains. In this week, we're going to be talking about something that's on a lot of people's minds, something that people hear about a lot, and that is streaming television and streaming services and how it's going to affect the future of live sports. And to answer that question, we have to answer a few sort of separate questions, and it's basically, are live sports doomed because of streaming? We'll get into that. And are TV networks that carry live sports currently lagging too far behind to catch up to these streaming services such as Netflix or Hulu? And what will the future of sports on TV look like? And so before we can get into all that, we have to first know what streaming is in general. And I know a lot of you probably already know this, but basically streaming is content that is being delivered to the end user via the internet. So it can be through your connected TV, your mobile device, your laptop, anything like that. So it's not linear TV, obviously, like you know, which is cable or satellite. And it's, like I said, just content that's being delivered to you on demand, streaming. So that's Netflix, Hulu, Amazon. Those are the people doing it now. And how it happened was how people are worried about it for people like NBC and Fox and CBS was that when Netflix and Hulu first came out, they were paying these companies for their content because they didn't have any content of their own. These companies were totally happy with giving it to them because it was another stream of revenue. Hey, sure, we'll let them pay for our shows. And now Netflix and Hulu and Amazon are building up their own original content, and it's causing people to, as all of you have heard the term, cut the cord. So just get rid of cable altogether because they don't watch anything live. Why watch anything on linear television when you can stream it all at your convenience on Netflix? And so now the question is, what are these television channels, so Fox and CBS, NBC, TNT, those kind of people, what are they going to do when more and more people start cutting the cords? So we also have to get into a few basic numbers before we can get into what sports, what people who are paying for sports to broadcast sports, what they have to worry about. So to do that, we have to look into some of the numbers about cord cutters and who still has linear television. And this is based on an eMarketer report for 2017. They expect 22 million people to so-called cut the cord, get rid of cable altogether. And that's up 33% from last year, which to me is pretty crazy. I mean, 22 million people is a lot of people to just say, you know what, cable's not worth it to me at all. I don't need to watch anything live, which basically means I don't need to watch live sports. I don't need to watch the Oscars, anything like that, because when you don't have cable, you're not watching anything live. It's all on demand. And that might seem a little bit crazy to people, but there are still 196 million people who have linear television, so cable, satellite, basic TV. And that number is going to drop by 2021 based on this same survey to 181 million people to have cable. And by then, they think 30% of people will only be streaming in America, which is kind of crazy to think that 30% of people by 2021 will just have no live television whatsoever in terms of how we think of live TV. And at this point now, we can sort of flip to sports and what this has to do with sports. And truthfully, it has everything to do with sports because sports is a television product. I mean, the NFL is a TV product. Most people, I think it's something like 95% of NFL fans will never step foot in an NFL stadium. So these sports, Major League Baseball, the NBA, NHL, the NFL, are TV products, and their TV partners, whether it be Fox, CBS, NBC, TNT, are vital parts to what they're doing because this is how they're making a bunch of their money is through television rights. So with people cutting their cords and not having subscriptions to cable services, what are these companies going to do going forward? And as many of you know, the NFL's ratings are down. They were down last year, and they're down again this year. Through week 7, they're down like 5.5%. But it's still the number one show on television, number one program on television in terms of the NFL. They're averaging 15.4 million viewers for the national TV games. And when you look at the rest of TV across the board, the numbers are down way more than for the NFL in terms of what people are watching live. And this is what's good for people who are in the sports content business. So that's ESPN, Fox, because live sports are one of the only reasons that people still do have cable, especially when you're talking about young people, millennials who are cord cutting. Maybe the last thing they're trying to hold on to is, how am I going to watch live sports if I don't have cable? If I just have Netflix, it's kind of hard to watch live sports because Netflix doesn't carry live sports whatsoever. And so that's good news for Fox. That's good news for ESPN, that they own this content for now. They're going to own it for the next couple of years at least while their contracts are still going on. And they have relationships with these companies, and they are the ones that are producing all of these games, and they have all of the so-called talent, whether it be the broadcasters or the color commentary people. So going forward, they're in a good position right now, even though the ratings are down because people are cutting cords. And now the question is, who's currently streaming sports? What sports can you watch on streaming platforms? And as most of you know, last year, Twitter paid $10 million to broadcast 10 different Thursday night football games for the NFL. And all you have to do was have a Twitter account. I don't even know if you actually needed a Twitter username. You could have just gone on to twitter.com and you could stream 10 Thursday night games. And they used the CBS or NBC broadcast. And it was basically an experiment. I mean, $10 million for $1 million in an NFL game is nothing. But no one really watched. The average viewers it was like 265,000 people watched that last year on Twitter, which is really low compared to the CBS or NBC numbers, it's like 15 million every night. So it's basically 2% of the people were watching it on Twitter. And then this year, Amazon copied Twitter, and they did the exact same thing. They paid for 10 Thursday night football games, except this time they paid $50 million, and you have to be an Amazon Prime subscriber to watch these games. And all of the ratings aren't in for that yet, but the first week they did a game, which was Thursday night Bears-Packers, a big rivalry. It didn't do great. It did better than the average Twitter games did. It was like 372,000 people watched a significant portion of the game. They said it reached like 100 or 1.6 million, but they counted that if you had it on for like a second or something like that. So that's not really watching the game. But still, CBS was where most people are watching the game. Only 2.5% of the people watched it on Amazon. Because if you were watching it on Amazon, you were basically watching it on CBS because they're pulling in the CBS broadcast completely. The only thing that Amazon had different than CBS were the commercials that Amazon was playing. So for now, Amazon's just paying $50 million to take someone else's content, which is what Netflix used to be doing. And what they used to be doing was paying for content that's not theirs. So in the future, if sports are going to be live streamed and Amazon and Twitter and Facebook down the line want to be in the NBA or the NFL, they're going to need to build out their broadcasting aspect of their companies, which they currently don't have anything whatsoever. And what's crazy is that for all this talk about people worried that these networks are lagging behind in terms of streaming, where, Netflix is going to be able to destroy ESPN or Fox because this is the wave of the future. Currently, right now, Fox, NBC, CBS, you can watch all of their sports content live streaming. You just have to have cable because you have to plug in your password and your cable information, and then you can watch it on your phone or your laptop. on, say, Watch ESPN or Fox Sports Go or the NBC Sports app. So right now, they do have streaming services, and you can stream all the games, say if you're out of town in a hotel room or your cable's out or something like that. So they're not just lagging this far behind. It's just that right now, live sports are still doing well on television compared to everything else. So there's not really a reason for them to transition to streaming yet. But some of them already are really experimenting with it. And one of the big people doing it is CBS. They have CBS All Access, which they started in late 2014, and that is a completely separate streaming service that you don't need to have cable or television to have access to CBS programming. So this is all streaming CBS programming, whether it be the NFL or college basketball, or they're programming like The Big Bang Theory. It's CBS All Access, and those numbers have been going up. They already have 2 million people who just subscribe to CBS All Access. I think it's like $5.99 a month or something like that for access to all of CBS's programming live streaming. And ESPN, who's been in the headlines for an array of reasons that we don't need to get into all of today, but their subscriber numbers have gone down. That is a fact. But when you really look into the numbers, their subscribers have gone down 13 million since 2011. That was at their peak. It was like 100 million subscribers, and now they're at 87 million. And this is according to Nielsen data. But when you really look into it, their subscribers are going down because people are cutting cords. And a lot of the people cutting cords weren't necessarily ESPN watchers in the first place. So if you look further into the numbers, ESPN's what they're charging per subscriber has gone up 50% while they've lost 13 million subscribers. So what they're saying to these cable providers is the only reason more people aren't cutting the cords is because they want to watch ESPN. I mean, I know that is the only reason I haven't cut a cord and still have cable is to watch live sports. And ESPN is a big part of it. They have college basketball, college football, which I really like, NBA. So for all the talk about ESPN is doomed, really it's that all these subscribers they're losing weren't necessarily watching ESPN. They just had cable, and ESPN is on basically every single cable package possible. So when a bunch of people cut cable, ESPN technically loses subscribers, but a lot of those people weren't watching ESPN in the first place. But with that said, they're already now trying to get ahead of this with streaming. So in 2018, Disney announced that they're going to have a completely Disney/ESPN. It's a little unclear if it's going to be Disney streaming and an ESPN streaming separately, but they're going to have a streaming service all their own. Disney's taking all their stuff off of Netflix, and ESPN is going to be a big part of what Disney's doing because, as you know, they own ESPN, and Disney owns BAM Tech, which is this streaming company who already does all of the streaming services for HBO and the NHL and Major League Baseball and even Worldwide Wrestling, the fake wrestling everyone watches on TV, which is widely popular. They're going to be doing this in 2018. So for all the talk about ESPN, they're getting ahead of it. And then the question becomes, what does the future of sports look like on TV? And I definitely don't have an answer for you about that today. No one really does, or they would have already been doing it. But one possibility is something that Hulu is testing out. Well, not testing out. They're already doing it, and that's Hulu Live. So I think you pay $39.99 a month, and you then have access to a bunch of live programming, including live sports on Hulu. So you don't have to have cable. You have to have internet, and then you can watch live sports via Hulu. So that's you can get a CBS broadcast of a college basketball game or a Fox NFL game on Hulu on Sunday. Because streaming isn't going to stop live sports, because live sports are the only things that people need to watch live. I mean, all of your other television shows, there's no need for you to tune in on Tuesday night at this specific time when you could watch it Wednesday morning if you want in the morning, and there's no commercials. But live sports are must-watch television because it only matters if you don't know what's going to happen. So you're not going to watch a game 2 days later. At that point, it doesn't matter at all. So live sports are still going to be around, and they're still going to be driving people to pay for television. It might look a little different in a few years. Linear TV is definitely going to look different. Certainly 10 years from now, TV as we know it's going to change substantially. But live television is only going to be around at this point because of live sports. And at the end of the day, the people that are in business with the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, big-time college sports, content is king. So if you're in business with them, no matter who you are, if it becomes Facebook or Hulu, or if Netflix decides to get into live sports, if you own live sports, you're going to do well, because that's one of the last things people care about live. Everything else, it doesn't matter. And that does it for us on another episode of Full Court Finance. Until next time, I'm your host, Ben Rains. And remember, if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot us an email over at podcasts@zacks.com.